Former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin is now in a 23-hour-a-day solitary confinement after being let out of court in handcuffs on Tuesday following his conviction for the murder of George Floyd. The 45-year-old faces 40 years in prison for kneeling on Floyd's neck for 9.5 minutes. A spokesperson for Oak Park Heights Prison, a maximum security facility, says Chauvin is being kept in an isolated wing for his own safety. The New York Times reports the court has a sentencing date of June 16th. Willie.
Philonise Floyd, the brother of George Floyd, wrote an op-ed in the Washington Post titled, "For my brother George Floyd, this is what justice feels like." While calling for police reform, Philonise wrote this, quote, "This verdict is historic, but it shouldn't be historic to punish people who do bad things, even if they wear a police uniform, especially if they wear a police uniform. This week, our family received a measure of justice because regular citizens and those in authority took the most basic human action. They did the right thing. It's up to all of us to build on this moment. We must end the qualified immunity that too often shields law enforcement officers from responsibility, require police to maintain body camera and dash cam videos, and ban chokeholds and no-knock warrants." He goes on, "Now it is time for the U.S. Senate to do its part and pass the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act and begin the work of transforming policing in the United States. What does justice feel like? It feels like maybe we can finally take a breath." That's Philonise Floyd, George Floyd's brother. Casey Hunt. So we heard this also from President Biden the other day, who said this is the beginning of something. The work does not end here. It begins here. So what does that look like in the Congress you cover every day?
Well, Willie, I got to tell you, I wasn't terribly optimistic about it, especially heading into, as we were all so on edge about the verdict. But we actually heard from Senator Tim Scott yesterday, and he has been taking the lead with this among his colleagues on the Republican side of the aisle in the Senate. And Tim Scott is very well respected, and he has spoken out on these issues in a very frank and straightforward way in the past. And he made some remarks to reporters on the Hill saying he actually thought they may be able to reach some sort of compromise in the next 1 to 2 weeks on some of these provisions. And the George Floyd Policing Act would make some changes to the system. The sticking point, the hardest piece of it is qualified immunity, where police officers in civil suits are protected. They benefit from immunity in some of these situations. And Democrats say we got to end that. Police officers have to be held liable for their own actions on the job in these egregious situations. So there is still quite a ways to go here. Again, 60 votes. Tim Scott will have to bring 10 of his colleagues along on this. Democrats will have to decide that they are willing to make some changes, to not go as far as perhaps they would like to. But that was a glimmer of hope where we didn't expect one.
Yeah, and Gene Robinson, I've talked about how that verdict was justice in that case. It was justice for a murderer. And justice was served, but that was just justice in one case. Obviously, anybody suggesting that somehow this is going to create a holistic solution or a global solution, obviously is far too naive. We still have some steps, a lot of steps to go to make sure this becomes the rule and not the exception. I'm curious, what do you think about the actions taken by the Attorney General? What do you think about the legislation that Tim Scott's talking about? Are those some of the steps we need to take to get to a point where we can say, okay, this was actually a moment that we're able to use as a country to move closer toward that promise of justice for all?
Those absolutely are some of the steps. What Attorney General Garland announced was a pattern and practice investigation of the Minneapolis Police Department to see if there is a pattern or practice of excessive police violence in Minneapolis, as many residents have alleged, and this is the sort of thing that the Justice Department should do, and in fact regularly did before the Trump administration, which essentially stopped doing it. And it can result in, it can lead to reforms, especially in a case, I hope and suspect, like Minneapolis, where you have a reform-minded police chief, a department that will not reject this scrutiny, I think, but mostly welcome it and embrace it. And so if you can have this sort of cooperative relationship between the Justice Department and a police department, or at least the police brass, to first diagnose problems that might exist and then fix them, that's got to help. And the legislation, it is amazing to hear Casey and others speak optimistically about the George Floyd Act, or I hope it's still named that at the end, and the possibility that it might actually get passed through regular order. It's Tim Scott is Senator Scott is working on it for the Republicans, and Congresswoman Karen Bass is negotiating for the Democrats, and she's very tough but very pragmatic, and this could happen, and I think it would be a major step forward to ban chokeholds. To some of the other provisions would be a more than a good start. It would be a significant step in this process.
Hey, thanks so much for watching our YouTube channel. You can follow up on today's top stories and breaking news, or catch up on your favorite MSNBC shows all in one place. Download the NBC News app today.